Good morning, brothers and sisters. We'll start shortly. Okay. Warm welcome to our masters, Brother Joe Huang, Hualien Dharma team, and brothers and sisters around the globe to Saturday Hualien Dharma Talk. Let us start the session for today. Recently, disasters have happened so rampantly one after another due to the great imbalance of four elements. Now with COVID-19 virus pandemic around the world, Masters have great concern and earnestly urge everyone to repent and adopt vegetarian meal. Going vegetarian is a way to express our sincere piety, to pray for peace and world free of disasters. It is the purest way of love for all living beings. Now let us send our sincere prayers into the 10 directions. May the Sahara land be free from disaster and peace prevails in the world. Let us sing the prayer song with sincere piousness.
In my heart, I feel deep gratefulness. All my heart is filled with sincere prayer. From all corners of the world, let us join our hearts and pray for a world of harmony and peace. From my heart, I pray. May we join our hands, our hearts as one. Spread the seeds of great love, nurture wisdom evermore. Let us fill the world with hope. In my heart, I feel deep gratefulness. May all the Buddhas know my prayer. All united with one heart, let us end our hate with love. May there be no suffering hereafter. In
May all minds be purified. May there be peace in the community. May there be no disasters in this world. Together we pray for universal love and blessing. With loving respect, gratitude, and confidence, let us wish every person in our lives a healthy body and enlightened mind, and total fulfillment in universal love. Now let us expand this consciousness to include every person in the world, every being in the universe. Let our unified love make this wonderful world even better. Let us all immerse ourselves in the joyful embrace of universal love. Okay, before we go to the next section, let us invite our Buddha Masters to lead us in paying homage to the Triple Gems. Let us pay our respects for these teachings and explanations to the Buddha and Master Cheng Yen by making 3 sincere bows. Please rise, palms together. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. And a bow to our beloved Abode Masters who could join us today. Okay, today we have Pure Heart Tell Stories with the stories of Parable of Lost Son. Sister Yvonne and Sister Moon will be on this, and followed by Brother Joe Huang on the Dharma Discussion. Before we start, let us invite Sister Su Ching for the weekly summary. Sister Su Ching, over to you.
Okay, hold on now. Okay, I am actually in Genting Highlands with my office. We are having a management retreat. My colleague is still sleeping, so I will be quick about this. All right. Last week, Brother David had an enlightening session with us. From 4 thought-provoking questions brought up to be discussed. The first was an observation about some groups of people who lie about their conditions without scruples, without principles. The question was if it was right to dig for wrongdoings through checks and analysis and expose the trickster and the fraudster for who he really is. Brother David reminded us that there is no one we don't trust and there is no one we cannot forgive. Performing our work diligently without doubt and anger is the only way to live. If our nature is giving, then it should not be tainted by others who are not. Give of ourselves earnestly and wholeheartedly, aligning with lessons that Master has taught. The second question was about forgiveness of others and family members. Brother David said to use the wisdom of the Buddha Dharma and to constantly remember. To consistently apply equanimity to everyone that surrounds us equally. Always remember that great love is for all to practice impartially. Question 3 was, we strive for nirvana, yet we make vows to the Saha world we return. It seems like there is a contradiction, or is that something else to learn? To return to the Saha world, to assist sentient beings is not the path to Buddhahood. There is no contradiction if the path to nirvana is to do good, as we all should. The final question touched on where the Buddha is now. To answer this question, Brother David defined the Buddha as only Buddhists know how. A Buddha is a sentient being who is enlightened, whereas you see. A sentient being is a Buddha who has not yet been enlightened, but will eventually. In recognition of all of us with Buddha potential, the Buddha is therefore in each and every one of us. Answer is simply, the Buddha is you and me, thus making the question profound yet superfluous. Brother Joe Huang came on, and Brother Joe talked about chapter 2 about skillful means with more narration. He painted a scenario of many highways to one destination. He explained that while the one true path could be highway number 1, the skillful means are the many ways to get there, which is part of the fun. In addition to that, the chapter talks about knowing what you are leaving for, and also the why you are leaving is a question we cannot ignore. The various paths are detailed in the 37 principles of enlightenment, each profoundly requiring a lot more heart-searching deliberation. The chapter is Buddha's recipe and list of ingredients to achieve Buddhahood. It is definitely a path peppered and laced with all things good. And that's it from it. That's it from me today. I'll pass over to Sister Yvonne for the next session. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.
Good morning, all brother and sister. Just give a moment to share the screen. All can see? Yes. Okay, very good morning to all brothers and sisters. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share again at this platform. What I'll be sharing today is also the output of translation work done by the Pure Heart translation team. This time round, I'll be leveraging on the work done by Sister Sihu, who is from Penang, on Master Te Hang's sermon conducted on 6 May last week. Today's main agenda will be sharing on Chapter 4 of Lotus Sutra, Parables of the Lost Son. However, Master Te Hang have also given a brief view on the current disaster impacting our world and a short recap on the parable of the burning house. So this topic will cover both the imbalance of macrocosm and also the brief summary of Lotus Sutra, Parable of the Burning House. Okay, so there is a saying, pictures can paint 1,000 words. And looking at the many pictures on this slide, it truly tells us of the sufferings faced by mankind due to the natural and man-made disasters. We are now in Dharma degeneration age, facing the imbalance of the 4 elements, fire, water, wind, and earth. In 2020 alone, more than 40 million of people are living in starvation and famine. In 2021, conflicts, climate change has caused massive earthquakes, floods, typhoon, and fire around the globe, and the continuous impact of COVID-19. This year, the aftermath of Russian-Ukraine war more recently, causing sufferings to many. The World Food Programme has estimated that the situation this year would be even more serious than in 2021. Master has said, if we are to contemplate on the situation in Taiwan or even in Malaysia, we have ample food and clothing. But on the contrary, how many people are living on the verge of hunger, and some have no food at all in other parts of the world. So Master has said that we should really cherish our blessing. And Master Cheng Yen has continuously reminded us on 3 things. 1, appreciate our blessing. 2, cherish our blessing. 3, continue to cultivate more blessing. So we must have an empathy mind to sense the sufferings faced by the victims of the various disasters. In our everyday living, we must be vigilant and pious. We must contribute where we can to help the needy. When the 4 elements are not in harmony, we can never know when impermanence will strike us. On the parables of the burning house, Master Te Hang have gave a short recap. Here I go. An elderly rich man saw his mansion caught fire and kept asking the children to leave the burning house, yet the children were too engrossed in playing that they just looked at him and continued to play on. So the elderly rich man applied the skillful means to entice the children to leave the burning house. He displayed 3 carts, goat, deer, and the ox cart, filled with all precious adornments to lure them out safely. The 3 cart analogies is relating to the teaching of the voice hearer, solitary realizer, and bodhisattva vehicle, which is also known as the great vehicle. The old house is an analogy of the sufferings in the 3 realms, desire, form, and formless, and the children playing the old house are all the sentient beings. The 3 vehicles law was expounded to help sentient beings rid of sufferings in the 3 realms. The great vehicle will help sentient beings to attain enlightenment and Buddhahood, meaning to say, those who receive the big cart will eventually become Buddhas. It is also in chapter 3 that Buddhas have bestowed the prediction for Venerable Sariputra that he will attain Buddhahood in the future. The reason why Master Joe Huang gave a brief recap of parables of the burning house and prediction of Venerable Sariputra is to connect us to the chapter on the parable of the lost son. In this topic too, it will take us to the repentance by 4 of Buddha's top 10 disciples, whereby Buddha's prediction to Venerable Sariputra, through Buddha's prediction to Venerable Sariputra, these 4 disciples realized all the while they were practicing the small vehicle that is to benefit self only. So I would like to request that all of you now imagine you are the Lotus Sutra assembly to better appreciate the subsequent narration on the stories. At the time when the World Honored One gave prediction that Venerable Sariputra would attain Buddhahood in future, 4 of his disciples, top 10 disciples, was moved as never before, and they all filled with joy. The 4 are Venerable Subhuti, Mahakasyapa, Mahakasyapa, and Mahamaugalyayana. At once, all 4 of them rose from their seats, arranged their robes, bare their right shoulders, and bowed with their right knees to the ground as shown in the picture. Pressing their palms together with a single mind, they bent their bodies in a gesture of respect, gazing up in reverence at the face of Honored One, and said the following to the Buddha. We stand at the head of the monks, and all of us are old and decrepit. We believe that we had already attained nirvana, and that we were incapable of doing more, and so we never sought to gain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. It has been a long time since the World Honored One first began to expound the principle of Bodhisattva. During that time, we have sat in our seats, our body very and inert, meditating slowly on the concept of emptiness, non-form, and non-action. With regards to the supreme and transcendental power of the doctrine of Bodhisattva, or the purifying of Buddha lands, or the transformation of sentient beings, back then, this mind of ours never took joy in. But now, in the presence of the Buddha, we have heard this voice hearer receive a prediction that he will attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, and our minds are greatly delighted. We have gained what we have never before. Suddenly, we have been able to hear the one true Dharma that is really encountered, something we never expected up to now, and we look upon ourselves as profoundly fortunate. We have gained great goodness and benefit, and immeasurable rare jewel, something unsought that came to us. For info of everyone, one true Dharma is also the great vehicle Dharma, the Bodhisattva path.
Sister Yvonne.
Yes.
I just wonder, I mean, when I was listening to the Xing Fa Xiang earlier too, why it was important for Buddha to give predictions of Buddhahood to his disciples. And, at that time, because, the chapters were following and I didn't have the opportunity. So this was a really good opportunity to be informed why it was important to give prediction. To me, my understanding is that it is actually Buddha's skillful means, right, in opening the minds of some of his nearest and dearest disciples, who actually is already at the highest level of cultivation. And yet, even at that very high level of cultivation, right, the mind has not still fully open and accept that there was a further way to go, that there is a higher level, that there is a better level that they can achieve, isn't it? So he is just using a very skillful means to show these highly cultivated disciples, to make them leave for the great vehicle, so that they can achieve the state of Buddhahood as well. Yeah. So then I think, how does it relate to, let's say, us? We are householders, we are normal practitioners. I think that it's the same with us, I guess, yeah, because the Master is just like Master, she has opened so many Dharma doors for all of us who are fortunate enough to get into contact with this. And she showed us that there are so many ways we can cultivate, that, there are so many levels that we should aim to go, because that is finally going to take us to our final destination, and that is our innate pure nature, right?
Yeah.
So we shouldn't cage ourselves. I think I'm guilty of that, but I don't know if others are. But I will cage, we tend to cage ourselves and said, this cultivation thing, it's very deep and it takes a long time. And perhaps I'll do so much now, because our daily lives take a lot of, we have so many obligations as a layperson, on our time, our resources, our energy, by family members, by friends, by the society that we live in, isn't it? So, there's only so much we can do. I will do so much within this lifetime. Hopefully in my next lifetime, I'll do a little bit more, my next life. So we cage ourselves in this and gave ourselves this much to do within this lifetime, isn't it? So,
yeah, most of us
yes,
most of us assume that we be born in the human realm again, but not necessarily.
Yes, correct. We assume that we will, but we actually don't know if we will have a chance again, isn't it? So then then it leads me to think that Master then is trying to say, look, maybe this cultivation thing, it is not work. In actual fact, it is not work. When we look at it as impinging on our time, our energy, our resources, but it is something that is woven into our day. It should be woven into our daily life, right? So that's why I think Master has very successfully demonstrated, like in Tzu Chi, that in our daily lives we cultivate. And it is this cultivation, this effort of cultivation is woven into our daily lives. There is Dharma in each and every action that we do, in each and every day that we live our lives, right? And so the teaching is that recognize this, understand the Dharma that we do, that every little action that we take, and from there it will naturally take us to a higher and higher level. And let us not be caged, because if it takes us to a very high level at the end of our lives, then we reached our maximum potential within this life. We do not set these limits, on ourselves.
Yeah.
This is
and
what
the second, yeah.
So,
And the
so
second
I wonder if
assumption,
I'm right. I wonder if I'm right.
Anybody in the audience want to add on to Sister?
Is there anyone who will tell me whether I'm correct in my thinking, or maybe I'm missing the point? Any brothers and sisters who can help here?
Morning, sisters. Well, I think we should stop finding excuses for ourselves. I think that is the point. And Buddha and Master kept telling us that there is a Buddha in us. However, from a very, very long time ago, we have deviated from the track. So in spiritual practice, we are actually going back on this path of cessation, in eliminating, in improving ourselves by eliminating our habitual tendencies. So one of our habitual tendencies is obviously to find excuses for ourselves, to think that, that is a fast track, that is an easy way out of everything. But in reality, there is none. On this path, what we need to do in spiritual practice is often, Master said, 闻思修, that means you have to listen, you have to contemplate, and you have to put the teaching into practice. So it is actually not easy, but if we look around and Sister Yvonne has so beautifully summarized on the poor son and the burning house. We are in a burning house with climate change, temperature rising, but how many people actually proactively, take the stance in saying that I have got to change? These SDG goals at the moment, it seems that is only being, seriously looked into now by companies, but companies are only companies. The change has to come from the individuals. So we are all in a pot of hot water. We're getting used to the temperature rising and not knowing how and when to jump out. So, this practice of Mother Earth protection, etc., practicing the 5R, reduce, reuse, repair, and recycle. Not many people are doing it because they always think that it is the next person problem, it's the next generation problem. I'm not going to live so many years. But, when we come back to this world in our next life, where do you think this world is going to be? So, we're not doing it for others, we're doing it for ourselves. And that is the whole point about spiritual practice, that, improve yourself and at the same time, bring others along on the same path. So instead of choosing, the sheep, take on the big cart and bring a lot of people with you. So instead of driving, take the aeroplane of full load of people on this spiritual path, the body path. So that's my understanding. So we are constantly finding excuses for ourselves in not practicing.
I think that's very spot on. Spot on. Finding excuses. That's what I always tell myself too. Stop finding excuses for delaying to do some things that I think that I can contribute. Stop finding excuses for not wanting to do it. I think that it's very easy to find excuses to not do something. Yeah, isn't it, nah? I don't know, Brother Chin, would you have something to say with regards to this this prediction of Buddhahood? And Brother Chin, are you there?
I think whatever needs to be said, all be said by you, brothers and sisters, So I don't really have much to add. You must bear in mind that what we take on is not the it's the interwoven realization. You must understand that the Dharma is given in form. What needs to be interwoven into us is the truth. So we need to understand the truth in the Dharma, and there is a subtle difference in that. So in terms of change, in climate change, then let us try to understand what Master say are the minor calamities and the major calamities in the Kalpa. That is the truth. So we understand that we have to move our mind along with the changing Kalpas. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Sister Yvonne.
Okay, so I guess before I continue, the other assumption is everybody think that we will die at an old age, but it's not necessary so, because impermanence can strike anytime. Okay, so now back to topic 3. So in topic 3, Master Te Hang has also shared how the 4 disciples begin to narrate in parable form to Buddha at the Lotus Assembly on how they felt after hearing the prediction of Buddhahood for Venerable Sariputra. That's how the parable of the lost son came about. So let's begin the story of the parable of the lost son. So the 4 disciples said to Buddha, "We would be pleased now to employ a parable to make clear our meaning. Suppose there was a man still young in years who abandoned his father, ran away and lived for a long time in another land for perhaps 10, 20, or even 50 years. As he drew older, he found himself increasingly poor and in want. He hurried about in every direction, seeking clothing and food, wandering further and further afield, until by chance he turned his step into the direction of his homeland. The father, meanwhile, had been searching for his son without success and taken up residence in a certain city. The father's household was very wealthy, with immeasurable riches and treasures: gold, silver, lapis lazuli, coral, amber, and crystal beads, all filled and overflow from his storehouses. He had many grooms and menservants, clerks, attendants, elephants, horses, carriages, oxen, goats beyond number. He engaged in profitable ventures at home in all the lands around, and also had dealing with many merchants and traveling vendors. He said to himself, if I could only find my son and entrust my wealth and possessions to him, then I could feel contented and easy in mind and would have no more worries. World on one. At the time, the poor son drifted from one kind of employment to another until he came by chance to his father's house. He stood by the side of the gate, gazing far off at his father, who was seated on a lion throne, his legs supported by a jeweled footrest, while Brahmins, noblemen, and householders uniformly differential surrounded him. Festoons of pearls, worth thousands, adorned his body, and clerks, grooms, and menservants, holding white fly whisk, stood in attendance to the left and the right. A jewel canopy covered him, with flower banners hanging from it. Perfumed water had been sprinkled over the ground. Heaps of rare flowers were scattered about, and every precious objects were ranged everywhere. Such were the many different types of adornment, the emblems of prerogative and marks of distinction. When the poor son saw how great his father's power and authority, he was filled with fear and awe, and regretted he had ever come to such a place. Secretly, he thought to himself, this must be some king, or one who is equal to a king. This is not the sort of place where I can hire my labor and gain a living. It would be better to go to some poor village where I, if work hard, I will find a place and can easily earn food and clothing. If I stay here for long, I may be seized and pressed into service. Having thought in this way, he raced away from the mansion. At the time, the rich old man, seated on his lion throne, saw his son and recognized him immediately. His heart was filled with great joy, and at once he thought, now I have someone to entrust my storehouses of wealth and possession to. My thoughts have been constantly with this son of mine, but I have no way of seeing him. Now suddenly he had appeared of himself, which is exactly what I would have wished. Though I'm old and decrepit, I still care what becomes of my belongings. Thereupon he dispatched a bystander to go after the son as quickly as possible and bring him back. At the time, the messenger raced swiftly after the son and laid hold of him. The poor son, alarmed and fearful, cried out in angry voice, I have done nothing wrong. Why am I being seized? But the messenger held on to him more tightly than ever and forcefully dragged him back. At the time, the son thought to himself, I have committed no crime, yet I am taken prisoner. Surely I am going to be put to death. He was more terrified than ever and sank to the ground, fainting with despair. The father, observing this from a distance, spoke to the messenger then, saying, I have no need of this man now. Don't force him to come here, but sprinkle water on his face so he will regain his senses. Then said nothing more to him. Why did the father do that? Because the father knew that his son was of humble outlook and ambition, and that his own rich and eminent position would be difficult for the son to accept. He knew very well this was his son, but as a form of expedient means, he refrained from saying to anyone, this is my son. The messenger then said to the son, I'm releasing you now, you may go anywhere you wish. The poor son was delighted, having gained what he had not before, picked himself up from the ground and went off to the poor village in order to look for food and clothing. At the time, the rich man, hoping to entice his son back, decided to employ an expedient means and sent two men as secret messenger, men who were lean and haggard and had no imposing appearance. Go, seek out the poor man and approach him casually. Tell him you know a place where he can earn twice the regular wage. If he agrees to the arrangement, then bring him here and put him to work. If he asks what sort of work he will be put to, say to him that he will be employed to clear away excrement and that the two of you will be working with him. The two messengers then set out at once to find the poor man, and when they had done so, spoke to him as they had been instructed. At the time, the poor son asked for an advance on his wages and then went with the man to help clear away excrement. When the father saw his son, he pitied and wondered at him. Another day, when he was gazing out at the window, he saw his son in the distance, his body thin and haggard, filthy with excrement, dirt, sweat, and defilement. He said to himself, I must find a way to guide him and get close to him. The father immediately took off his necklace, his soft fine garments, and his other adornments and put on clothes that were ragged and soiled. He smeared dirt on his body, took in his right hand a utensil for removing excrement, and assumed a gruff manner, spoke to the laborers saying, keep at your work, you mustn't be lazy. By employing this expedient, he was able to approach his son. Then saying to his son, I will be like father to you, so have no worries. Why do I say this? Because I'm well along in years, but you are still young and sturdy. When you are at work, you are never deceitful or lazy or speak angry or resentful words. You don't seem to have any faults of the kind the way my other workers do. From now on, you will be like my own son. And the rich man proceeded to select a name and assign it to the man as though he were his child. At this time, the poor son, though he was delighted at such treatment, he still thought of himself as a person of humble station who was in the employ of another. Therefore, the rich man kept him clearing and away excrement for the next 20 years. By the end of this time, the son felt that he was understood and trusted and he could come and go at ease, but he continued to live in the same place as before. Well-honored one. At the time, the rich man fell ill and he knew he would die before long. He spoke to his poor son saying, now I have great quantities of gold, silver, and rare treasures that will fill and overflow from my storehouses. You are to take complete charge of the amounts I have and of what is to be handed out and gathered in. This is what I have in mind, and I want you to carry out my wishes. Why is this? Because from now on, you and I will not behave as two different persons. We are of the same nature. So you must keep your wits about you and see that there are no mistakes or losses. At the time, the poor son, having received this instruction, took over the surveillance of all the goods and gold, silver and rare treasures, and the various storehouses, but never once he thought of taking things for himself, even as the cost of a single meal. He continued to live where he had before, unable to cease thinking of himself as a mean and lowly person. Well-honored one, this old man with his great riches is none other than the dust-come one, and we are all like Buddha's son. The dust-come one constantly tells us that we are his sons. But because of the three sufferings, well-honored one, in the midst of birth and death, we undergo burning anxieties, delusions, ignorance, delighted in and clinging to lesser doctrines. Buddha, knowing that our minds delight in lesser principle, employ the power of expedient means to preach in a way that was appropriate for us, i.e. according to our capability. So we do not know that we were in truth the son of the Buddha, but now at least we know it. With regard to the Buddha wisdom, the well-honored one is never begrudging. Why do we say this? From the beginnerless time, we have in truth been the sons of the Buddha, but we delighted in nothing but lesser principles. If we had a kind of mind that delighted in great teaching, i.e. sharp capability, then the Buddha would have preached the Dharma of the great vehicle for us.
Sister Yvonne, so maybe what we can do, I want to share what was my feeling for this particular topic of the lost son. I think this is a really powerful parable, to say that, to make us realize that, we are inherently so wealthy, but we never see our wealth. We never feel that we are wealthy, in any moment of our life, because, born as a human, we are constantly needing to survive in this world, right? We have work, we have family, and when we have work, we have to work hard to provide for our family and all that. So, our everyday life leads us further. If you're not careful, I feel that it really leads us further and further and further away from what we have that we don't recognize. And so if we don't have, that is why I say, if we are not contented, if we do not have that capacity to understand, to meet, to connect with the Dharma, and then to understand that we have all these things at our disposal, life just have this powerful way to lead us further and further and further away from our own wealth, that is the Buddha in us, where we could have everything we want, but we are not looking at it. We are looking always in the wrong place, in the wrong direction. And the other takeaway that I get from this is that Buddha never forsake us, isn't it? It's just like the father. He never gives up. Even the son keeps running away. He never gives up. He keeps trying to show us in all kinds of ways, using all kinds of skillful means, continuing kalpas after kalpas to show us, come back. There is so much wealth here. Don't have to go and suffer like that. Escape from your suffering, and in this, as our world becomes more and more of a burning house, knowing this actually can give us comfort. I feel that knowing that the Buddha will never forsake us, that he will continue to show us the way, that is in itself a very comforting and calming realization. And that gives and it kind of gives you the strength to carry on, to live your life, but perhaps to change in the way we think, so that it becomes easier and easier. Life becomes better and better, easier to bear the burden of living every day. That's my takeaway from this. Yeah, maybe some brothers and sisters would care to share, what is your takeaway from this powerful story. It's a very moving story to me, and very comforting. Yeah. Would any brothers and sisters care to share?
Yes, this is Joe. I think this is wonderful. So I would like to ask, to contemplate a little bit more, and I don't mean to interrupt. I think this can go on further. I heard the story, and I heard the questions and also the contemplation. I think this is wonderful. I think we can go on further. You don't have to worry about ending at 7:15. I think this is what I'm trying to say. I would like to ask, so we oftentimes see ourselves as the son, but I would also, if Sister Yvonne, you can go back to the slide where you have the father and dying and not dying, well, just lying in the bed, okay? And so this is a good one. So we often see ourselves as the son, but who are the people standing behind? I mean, you have a story. Yeah, you have the protagonist, you have the main character, and obviously the main character is the father and the son. And sometimes you have the supporting actors, the two servants that are ran off to chase, right? They got some role, very minor, but bigger than the people that's right now standing in the back. So who are those people, right? If you're the son, then identify in your life who the father is and who the people that are standing behind you, right? So they're important too, right? The servants are important too. So who are they? They must be someone in your life too. Okay, so that's the first question I would like to ask. And then maybe that's something that we can, imagine, right? We're always just thinking about, the leading role, right? The 男主角, 女主角, and the ones that are having, the wonderful life or the main stories. And then we don't see the people that are connecting the dots, right? Connecting the dots. Now, how would the servant think about the son, the child, right? The son who is working in the very low for 20 years, right? So how would the servant think? Oh gosh, you had it easy, right? You had a father that waits for you for 20 years. I don't, right? So what about their life? What about their life? Are they also son to somebody's, are they also son to somebody? And maybe they're, also not feeling content. Maybe the story is about them. Maybe this is a story about how someone always sees that, you had it easy. You have a father and who is gonna, wait for you for 20 years and said that I'm gonna pass all my treasure to you. Why? Because you're my son. So that's something that I would pass on. Two questions, right? One, who are those people that connected the dots in your life? It's not just about the father and the son. Two, what would they think, right? Maybe you are not the son. Maybe you are one of the people standing in the back, and maybe you're still not content because you're thinking that, yeah, I know the story, but it's not me. I'm not there. I don't have this father, or So that's something to be further contemplating about that I thought would be interesting, because I always like to think of it when in some movies, I don't see myself as the main character. I see myself as, when the war starts, you have the soldiers charging each other. I'm the first one that goes down, or not, maybe not the first one. I'm one of the 10th one to go down. So you don't even realize, that's how insignificant I think we sometimes really are. And then we think of ourselves as the main character. Before I pass it on again, pass back to Yvonne. It's a wonderful story. I don't mean to interrupt, but I heard this story. I don't know if you know these people, but Denzel Washington. Okay, so he's the African American actor. The name of the award escaped me. Academy Award, right? The Academy Award winner. So he's also very pensive. Okay, so he talks. He speaks a lot of the things are also very Dharma like. Okay, very Zen like. So one day he was talking to Morgan Freeman. Okay, another African American, wonderful and very famous actor. And so he was talking to Morgan Freeman. Now, he was very young at the time, and they were having a movie. So they have a sword fight, a scene. And he was very young. So he went up to Morgan Freeman, who was already very famous at the time. And he said, oh, so we have this sword fight, and we have three clicks, the three king, okay? And then I'm going to, slice you, wound you, right? Because the main character is obviously Morgan Freeman. But in this case, Denzel Washington said, thinking to himself that he is important. Okay, I'm here, even though I'm just a small guy, but I'm here to make a difference. And then Morgan Freeman said, okay, thank you. And what's your name? What's your name, son? Okay, so Denzel Washington says, I'm Denzel. You don't know me, and I love your work, and I think I'm here to further the plot. And then Morgan Freeman told him that, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have the sword fight. Click, 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 3 times. And then I'm going to stab you. And then you're going to die. And you're going to die quickly. Okay. So what I'm trying to tell you is we often see ourselves as the main character, even though we're not. And sometimes we make things bigger, like, oh, I'm going to wound you. And then eventually you're going to stab me and I'm going to, and then I won't die. It will take me about 10 seconds to die. And then Morgan Freeman said, no, that's not how it works. I'm just going to do this. And I'm going to stab you and you die. And then I'm going to move on to the next thing. So we oftentimes see ourselves as too big. And then we oftentimes don't see ourselves as the main character, right? The son didn't realize he's the main character. And then maybe somebody in the back didn't realize that I'm supporting this main character. And so then when we have this role mixed up, then we're going to have some problems with our lives. I'm supposed to be like him when you're the main character in your own movie, but you are trying to play the role of somebody that the already main character was already cast. But anyway, something to think about. I apologize to interrupt for so long, but this is just something that wonderful discussion. So please go on, Yvonne. And also if anybody would like to share about what they thought of the first 3 parts, because I know there's a conclusion coming up, but also something that wonderful story to get everybody thinking. All right. So thank you. Interruption. Sorry. Okay.
Okay. It's good. It's a good interruption.
Brother Joe.
Yes.
Yeah, Sister Moon here. Could these supporting characters be benefactors? Because I think Buddha, this is what I think, that perhaps Buddha used benefactors to help us to find the way.
Yes, absolutely. So that's what I'm thinking. We have those people in our lives too, right? It's not just, that's why in the movie you have supporting role, right? Actors and actresses in the supporting role, because without them, you wouldn't be in the leading role. So I agree with you that one of the possibility is that those are the benefactors in our lives, and so look for them, right? They're in your life.
Yes.
They're in your life. And a lot of times, like right now, in that picture, right? In the slide that Sister Yvonne has, right? In the eyes of the son, you see the father, right? But in the eyes of the father, who do you see? The angle, you see the son and all those other people. And I think the story, just going from little bits and pieces here, if the thus come one is the father, then he treats everyone like his son. So it's not just the son kneeling there in a dying bed, right? The father treats all of them, even the servants in the back. And then I'm sure he had these stories, right? With the 2 servants that ran out to chase, right? They must have long talks too. Like when they were starting, and they go like, well, I'm just going to get my work, and I'm going to get my pay, and I'm going to go get my food. I'm going to go and raise a family and do all this. I'm going to move on to bigger things. And probably the father, the landlord, or the wealthy man, or the old man, whoever the main guy is, probably having, a big talk too, and say, hey, you're just here for the job, but I don't want you to walk away with only the money. I want you to walk away with more than that. You need to feel accomplished. You need to do, all those, pep talk that you have, right? All the talk that you would have to someone who needs your guidance, right? So, maybe you think of this kid, who has done nothing to earn the love of the father, but look back home. You have a father, maybe not the father, but you have this father who's also willing to pass on this wealth to you. Maybe not the fortune, maybe not this gold and silver, but your your father or your old man is going to pass on something to you, right? And you will also pass something to your kids. It might not be gold and silver. It might be something more valuable, right? So I'm sure in the eyes of the father who is lying there, you know, in his final moments, he looks at all the people, not just seeing the son, but everybody. So that's what we need to do, right? We need to also look around and say, wow, there are all these people completing my life and completing this journey. Don't just look at the father, right? Because there are all these other people. So same thing for us too. I think there are all these people, benefactors, like the sister said, benefactors that are around us, and you don't realize that. But to the father, he sees all of you. I am leaving something with you all, not just the gold and the silver. Maybe that one person gets it, like, you know, maybe Master Cheng Yen gets a lot of it. Our master gets a lot of it from the Buddha, right? And we're all just like, yeah, you know, I'm just here, you know, connecting the dots, right? I'm just doing my work here, and you know, this is what I do. I'm just a little piece of connector, right? But maybe the Buddha is speaking to all of us, and don't, you know, even though sometimes we're the playing the role in the supporting role, but in your own world, you are also the main character, and you have to know when you are the main character and when you are the supporting role. And this is what I'm saying. So yeah, benefactors. You are also other people's benefactor. You know, if you're completing certain things for the father. Yeah.
Thank you, Brother Joe. Actually, this story reminds me of two situations of Parable of the Lost Son. One, when I was assigned as the window for Su Ching to take in the Tata. So these people are the lost son. If all of us are children of the Buddha, actually we are family members. So they come and knock on Su Ching's door. So we are family members. They are lost. They're already knocking on the door. They're afraid to step in. So we are the benefactors to them. The other part I remember was Brother Joshua sharing, because we always talk about Su Ching family. We all children of the Buddha. So he had an accident in US. That was the time he realized this teaching, because the sister brother there treat him really like a family, even though he was not the biological son. So he got the understanding of we are one family lah, if we coming from this angle. So can I continue to the conclusion now?
Yeah.
Please.
Very soon, got 2 pages only. Okay. So like what both Brother Joe and Sister Moon said just now, all the Buddha's disciples are Buddha's children. We all are also the Buddha's children. But because of our cyclical entanglement, we were trapped in this Saha world, still attached to worldly things, and has not yet seek for relief of suffering, not able to be liberated from the transmigration in the 6 realms. Buddha give us a lot of wisdom to save us. However, we are still with possessive love, attached to small love, and only seeking for self-liberation. We never think of walking the Bodhisattva path and are not ready for great love. We know that we need to cultivate small vehicle, and Buddha has been using skillful means to guide us. Buddha hopes we could form great aspiration and could receive the great teachings. The one vehicle, the Bodhisattva path, is the route to attain Buddhahood. Actually, Buddha could only expound small teaching as we are not ready. If we are ready, Buddha would have guided us with the great teaching. Though we have yet to make great vow, Buddha has given prediction to Venerable Sariputra that he will attain Buddhahood to inspire all. Buddha has come to the Saha world to continually expound the Buddha Dharma and guide us on the right path, to teach us about the nature of everyone's mind. And I would like to leave this contemplation with everyone. Now that we have the affinity to have the 3 rare to be born as human, rare to encounter Buddha Dharma, rare to meet a great master like our Master Cheng Yen. Now, do we know the way and methods to be liberated from the cycle of birth and death, i.e., to liberated from the transmigration of the 6th realm? Kanan, that's my sharing today. Om Tofo and Om Mani Padme Hum.
Sister Yvonne, I think those of us who are in this platform, we have the connection to the Dharma. My feeling is that, yes, we know all these, but we also know that, you know, to get to the final destination, we have to be very brave and to make vows. And, you know, That's why we always pull back, isn't it? We are so scared. We're scared to make vows. I can promise I'll do my best. So when we promise, when we do our best, we will never be doing things to our full potential, what we are capable of, because we hold ourselves back. And yet, why do we so fear to make vows? I don't know. I'm guilty of that. You know, I'm guilty to say, I vow to do this, I vow to do that, because I'm afraid that I cannot fulfill these vows. So I put a limit on myself. I'm still working on it. But basically, I think that this next step forward in the Dharma practice for me is not easy. Yeah.
Any brother, sister would like to add on?
Yeah. No, I think some brothers and sisters are very brave. They have a lot of vows and they are able to, carry these vows and challenges head on.
Okay. Else we will pass to Brother Joe the next session. Anyone? Okay, so then we pass to you, Brother Joe, for your next session.
Okay, thank you. Actually, discussion is always more fun, and I really like the way that we had, when you're done with one part, and then there will be commentaries and also the back and forth. I think that's really that feels really engaging. So that's why I think posing questions. And today, in the morning, the wisdom at dawn, we also hear the stories of the mentally ill child, and how there are the Tzu Chi volunteers help and clean the families, etc., the environment. And then you could imagine, right? You can imagine that maybe the father is somewhere, not the true father, but the real father. And so the father would send off these people to help, And maybe because if the father shows up, the child would not be able to understand. So you need to do something more. So you send off other people, and Tzu Chi volunteers are these servants that were sent, or maybe not servants, or servants of Buddha, right? That knew what they had to do. So all these stories give me this inspiration always, that to thinking about. I think one of the things that I talked about was in the parable of the burning house. I would be thinking about why would there be only one person yelling there's fire? There will be others, right? And there will be others that are willing to help, even though they might not see the fire. Maybe they don't know, they don't smell it, but they believe the person who saw the fire. And so when the person that saw the fire yelled out, "There's a fire," and you heard it, you don't know, you didn't see the fire, you didn't smell the smoke, you didn't see any smoke, but you believe that person. And so you would do the work, you extend their work. So when they said there's a fire and he turns around and saw you and you're right there, and you say, "Go tell people to get out of the house right now." And you believe them. You didn't see the fire. Sometimes maybe it's there, but you don't see it. But you don't need to see it because you believe in the person that told you that. So you went off and you begin to tell people that there's a fire. Now you're going to meet people that don't believe you, that just refuse to leave. So what are you going to do? Are you going to stay there and you tell them until they believe you? Or you're going to keep on telling more people? That's always a choice, right? There's no right or wrong. And so you might see others that believe you, or believe the person that told you that there's a fire. And then they would spread the message as well. Some people will not spread the message, but they'll believe you. So you're going to encounter all sorts of people, right? Those that don't believe you, those that challenge you, and those that spread misinformation about you, and those that don't believe you and do all sorts of things to go against you, eventually proving that you're right. and then they become the help that you're going to need. And then there's going to be those people that believe you and then spread your words. And there are going to be those people that believe you and said nothing. I believe you. I'm going to pack up all my things and I'm going to go. But I'm not going to tell anybody because, I'm getting out of here. So that's the real world. But the sutra and the story isn't going to tell you all of that. It needs ourselves to extend that, to sort of think about, if it's in a real situation, would it be that simple? No. And I'm already simplifying many things, right? I myself was not in any life and death situation. So the extent of my imagination can only go so far because I wasn't there and I wasn't put in that situation. So I wouldn't be able to know. But even that, my imagination and my thought process can take me further to the point where it's already much further than the story itself, because the story is only so much. And it requires us to be able to extend that, to go further, to think about what's really being said, to think about what's really happening. Okay, so that's why I think having conversation and being engaging, and just whipping out all these possibilities is very, very important. Much more important than just thinking about the story. And so oftentimes we have a person that does the storytelling, that tells the stories, and then there will be some interjections, people that would not interrupt, but they would interject. They would interject and they would ask questions to make the story even more personal, to make the story even more believable, to make the story even more valuable and meaningful. And that's what engaging is trying to do, so that we could really see more from your perspective, like, oh yeah, once I was really in the fire. Now, what did you do? How did you know about the fire? And what did you do about the fire? Did you do more to help people? And who are the firefighters? And what did they do? Right? So really, you could imagine that maybe the firefighter, maybe the fire marshal is the Buddha. Okay, he's coordinating all the efforts to get the people out. And maybe he's not the father. Maybe he's the fire marshal that's going to come in and try to get everybody out, right? Or maybe the father is the fire marshal, and maybe this is a firehouse. So there's so many there's so many different things we can think of it, and I think it's really makes the story more in depth and make it more interesting. Okay, so enough of that. We're gonna go into the next part where I started to share last week, but I always enjoy these ad hoc, these improvised, where there's no PPT and we just talk and engage about what's on our mind and what's on our thoughts. And because there's always Dharma, there's always stories linked to everything. Yet we still need to come back to a set pattern and set path. So Sister Yvonne shared about the parable of the parable of the lost son, and while we're continuing in this the skillful means, and in the last few weeks we talked about some of the main points in this chapter, and we talk about whys and names. So even something like this, even something as simple as why is the chapter named this? It gives us a lot of things to think about. And that's what I would like to, ask, posing this question to ourselves. Do you know why? What is your understanding of this chapter such that it is named this? And this could happen to, many chapters, and you could do this can do this exercise to yourself. Asking the same questions, and also, having any parable or having any story, asking yourselves that who are you in this in this movie or in this play or in this plot? Who are you? And then the next question would be, if you are that role that you just answered in the question 1, if you are that role, then who plays every other role that you see so far in this play, in this parable? And then further thinking, the third question that I always ask myself is, what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong on the first question? And what if you're wrong in the second question? What if you're wrong? That means, well, then pick some other roles. Maybe there's a different role that suits you better, and then you put yourself in a different role, and then you begin to think, well, maybe I am not that. Maybe I am the servant that was, when the father, changes the robe, right? I'm the one standing right behind and took the robe. Maybe I'm that role, and so beginning to question, maybe there's a different role that you're playing. And then come to the fourth question, which is, are you now certain, which role that you're playing? And maybe different time, a different place, you play a different role, but are you now certain which role you're playing? So that's the for every story, to go in to be personal. That's what I do. I would jump into the story and ask myself to be which role in the story. And then I will fill every role in that story up with, faces of the people that I know. And then I'll ask myself again, am I really sure? Maybe I am not the protagonist. Maybe he is, and if that's the case, then is everybody doing their jobs, or is everybody doing their role, and which part is not filling up? Okay. So anyway, that's the practice that I do, questioning myself. That's my contemplation. And then, so that's why one of the questions that I asked about this chapter is, well, why is the chapter named Skillful Means, right? And so one of the things that that's the question that I keep in my mind. I don't know enough about this chapter to answer this question, but let me go back to the chapter, and maybe I will know more when we move on. So I think the main points to this chapter is we're leaving something behind, and we're heading to something in the future, or something new, or something that's more profound. So whatever that we're leaving behind, we need to know where we're going. That's know what you are leaving for, okay? And know why you're leaving, right? Obviously, the past is not as good, or it's not complete, and we're leaving for something that is more complete, or something that's more well structured, or something that is more defined. And then how are you getting there, right? So these are some of the questions that I believe in this particular chapter we're going to be able to find the answers. And so how can you leave? Or in this chapter, it began by telling you that your goal is so far away. Okay, I think this is the wonderful thing about this chapter. After all, the Buddha had already been preaching for 40 plus years up until this point. And so it's not about going through the same old stories again. There are some foundations. So the Buddha, when started, after the first chapter, where the Buddha was, not talking, it was the disciples talking. The beginning of the second chapter, Buddha began to speak. And the very first thing that the Buddha said was, the goal that everybody needs to get to is so far away that none of you understand. So you can imagine, when somebody tells you that, you're probably thinking, well, if I believe you, then I'm not going to get there. Then why am I even here? If I don't believe you, which means I'm going to get there, now that's really contradictory, right? You're supposed to be my teacher. So how is it going to work, right? So that's why we have to hear the whole story. We can't just hear the story on its cover. So the Buddha said the goal and the objective is so far away, so difficult that none of you understand. But let me tell you how I got there, right? So maybe it's hard for you right now, but let me share with you how I got there. Maybe you could understand. So the Buddha explained how he got there, and maybe in the way that along the way, we figured out that, oh, so the Buddha is talking about his own story. Now, in this story, which character am I playing? Am I playing Buddha's role as he was going through all the journey that he was going through? Am I playing that? Or am I playing one of the people that followed? Or am I playing the role of the people that helped? Right? So that is why along the way, while you're helping others get there, you are also getting there. One of the things that struck me, last night we had this online get together, right? With our the families this family from Malaysia and also from elsewhere in Australia and also US. We got together and we had this heartwarming session and we share. And last night's topic was about the interpreter, the Lotus team, where we do the online translation for the Kaohsiung online book study, right? And my goodness, right? This is not the first time I heard this particular group or the other groups share, but amazingly, every time I hear about the story, it's always about how difficult it is, how everybody thinking that they are not up for the job, they might not be able to do it, but the team helped them and the group helped them, and the wonderful tools like Google, right? Google Translate help them. And even though they themselves feel that it's really, really impossible, but they did it, okay? And so I realized that I asked how many people knew about the Kaohsiung online book study before they were the interpreters. And most of them did not know about this book study. So a lot of them knew about the book study because they were recruited to do the translation, to do the interpretation, because they were there to help. So then they began to know about this online book study. And then they began to realize how wonderful such treasure is. And so you sort of get a sense that while you're helping others, you are on that same path also. So even though like Sister Yvonne's story, even though that you are not the son, even though that you're not the father, you are just somebody standing in the background there helping somebody, you are already moving along on this path also. Okay, so now coming back here to the chapter on the skillful means, the Buddha tells you that there is a long goal, and it was very difficult, in fact, impossible for you to learn, for you to get there. But this is how I do it. And I think this is very akin to how our sharing always goes, right? Last night was the same thing, right? You could have somebody who's very experienced in oral interpretation, and they would be telling you how, they do all this thing. But for a novice, it would be very difficult. Like they will be very scared, and they'll be thinking like, can I really do this? I only have, as Brother Joshua shared yesterday, from Malay, the language, he only had, I think, third grade, fourth grade, or some years of studying in school. So it's not like, 100%. But imagine that, right? Someone who I think was, Brother Chen before sharing with us that there are these interpreters who are experts, right? They're professionals, and they would know about the ins and outs of this language, right? So it would be like that person sharing with Brother Joshua to say that, hey, right now, your level, you can't. But I was like that too. And this is what I did. This is what we did. So last night we had that too, right? So we would have volunteers, we would have brothers and sisters sharing how they, would get this text, they would get this, the transcript, and then they would put it into Google Translate, and then they would go from there. They would just do slight modifications. They would change certain ways that was interpreted by machine, and they will make it more into people-like, right? And I also heard past stories about how, sometimes you can't read Chinese, so you have to rely on Google. And then other people would actually do one step further. They would play it they would play the Chinese. They would have the sounding of the Chinese, whether through machine or listen to the audio tapes, and then they would know what it was supposed to mean, because they can't read it, but they can understand by hearing and listening. So then they would now be able to compare the Google Translate with the originals in Chinese, even though they cannot read, but they can listen. So those are the tools, right? Wonderful tools. But then you understand, it's not the tools, right? It's not the tools, it's the people. And that's exactly what the chapter of Skillful means is telling us. I am sharing with you how I use the tools. And the Buddha doesn't want us to lose focus in the tools, right? If all the sharings you get were about the Google Translate, were about the replay of the audios, were about people getting you the transcript, then you're missing the point. The point is that the volunteers themselves, the brothers and sisters themselves, they work as a team. They work to help each other, right? So that's what this chapter is about. The Buddha was talking about how difficult it is, how impossible. If you remain as who you are right now, you can't get there. But let me tell you, I was like you, and I was even lower. I was even further away than you guys are right now. But this is what I did. So the beginning beyond that was Buddha explaining what he did. And he explained first by the tools that he used, namely the 37 principles of enlightenment, the 10 strengths, and the 4 fearlessness. Now, I think we got through all 3 of these tools. And supposedly we're supposed to get into the 10 suchness today. But as I'm getting into this topic, I realize that there is a small branch that comes out of it that I want to focus more on, which is that we tend to focus more on the tools, right? So it will be almost like, listening to all of your sharing, and then you're talking about, oh, I'm going to get the transcript, I'm going to put it into Google, and I'm going to do some modification, and I'm going to do all this, right? So missing the point of this energy and this life that the people put into this work. If all you hear is the tools, then you miss the point. Because I heard stories, I heard sharings. I apologize, I can't remember the name of the sharer. I'm sure you all experience the same thing, right? Where the translation goes back and forth, where you listen to it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times to make sure that the Google Translate does all of that and make sure you do all the parts correctly. And then there are parts that you don't understand. You send this piece off to somebody else who is going to help and say, oh, I think it's this. And then you're going to have the editors who listen to the same thing, who looks at the same thing, and they have a different idea about how to translate it. And then you engage in this debate. You engage in this discussion about how should it be translated, right? So if all you hear from all the stories is Google Translate, if all you hear about this is, oh, this person has the audio recording of this part, then you miss the point. This is the same exact thing that happened here in the Skillful means. The Buddha explained how he goes through everybody. He goes through the stages where he was like everybody, and then he used these tools to get to where he is enlightened. And then the disciples, they hear this, and in their eyes, in their heart, they go like, Google Translate. I know Google Translate. I use Google Translate, right? I use audio. I listen to the audio tapes. I did all of that. I did all this. Look at where I'm now. I'm not there. And you just told me that I'm so far away, I'm not going to get there, right? So you miss the point, because the point isn't about the tools, but it's about the intention. It's about the effort that you put into it, about the back and forth discussion, about the sense of responsibility that after, I remember this was Sister Lily, right? Talking about she can only do this work after 8 o'clock or 8:30 because of her work. But then she would do this, even one paragraph would take her so long because she can't read the Chinese. So she had to replay each part in I think it was audio, or maybe it was machine speaking in those Chinese, so that she understands the Chinese, not reading, but by listening, and then looking at the Google Translate, and then figuring out what the differences are and the true translation, or the true meaning, not just in the words, but the meaning behind the voices, behind those words, right? So that would be the main story. But in Skillful Means, when the Buddha was talking about the tools, the 37 principles of the enlightenment, the 10 strengths, and the 4 fearlessness, the students, the disciples, they heard this and they go like, I knew these tools. We use these tools. We were the teachers of these tools too, right? They were the preachers themselves, right? They were the foremost in wisdom. They're the foremost in expounding the Dharma. They were the foremost in supernatural powers. These disciples, they were some people. They were somebody. They were not like servants in the background that playing the supporting role, or even not supporting role. They're temps. No, these were the 10 of the foremost, or even the top 1,000 disciples of Buddha's retinue, right? Of Buddha's followers. So they were like, I know these, tools in and out. I use these tools every day. So Buddha, you're talking to me like I don't know these tools. Okay, so that's their attitude. Their attitude is that determines everything. Okay, so this is obviously, I wasn't there, but if I were there, I think that's how I would feel. There's an arrogance there, because after all, you've heard Buddha talking for 40 years, for 30 years. You know where this is going. So you go like, yeah, I know. You go like, yeah, I understand. Because you focus on the things you understand, but you never look at the things you don't. What does that mean? I think in this chapter, the chapter of Skillful Means, when the Buddha talked about, look at the things you don't understand. It's so profound that you're not going to be able to understand. There isn't a word of you, right? But the Buddha said that the world could be filled with unlimited amount of people like Shariputra, and you can pile all this wisdom together and you will still not understand, right? So what did the people focus on? Wait a minute, how is that possible? I am the foremost in wisdom in out of all these disciples, right? When I was born, when my mom had me in her stomach, my mom was like, winning all the debates. Why? Because I am the wisest, right? We hear all these stories, right? So when somebody tells you something that you don't understand, the first reaction that you have is, no, I understand a lot, right? You focus on what you know, but you're missing the point. The point is what you don't know, right? The point is the Buddha was telling you that there's so many things that you still haven't done. And let me tell you how I get there. And then when the Buddha was beginning to recount the steps and recount the tools, the first thing that comes to the mind of the people was, no, I knew all these things. Well, then you're not getting the point. The point is there's so many things you haven't got. So once again, coming back to earth, when people tell you things you don't understand, what is your first reaction? The first reaction is, of course I understand many things. Well, then you're stepping in the shoes of the people that right now faced with the Buddha, thinking that I got all this. But if you're the people that begin to contemplate, thinking about, well, there are many things that I perhaps don't understand. And there's a huge difference, right? If you're in here for 20 years, it's very easy for you to be the former guy to say, I got this, I understand this. But if you're only here for 3 months, then maybe you won't be so fast to think that you understand all of it, right? So there is a difference, but the attitude remains the same. The Buddha wanted us to have this attitude of not asking what you already know, but rather asking what else haven't you understood? And that's why the beginning of this chapter, the Buddha precisely said that there's so much more that you don't know. And they're so profound that even you can't comprehend if you maintain that attitude. If you keep on thinking about what you already understood, then you're not going to get there. Where you are right now, the way you're going, you're not going to get there. Only way to get there is if you change your attitude to start thinking about what else haven't we understand and what else haven't we learned. Okay, so the tools, 37 principles, 10 strengths for fearlessness. So we go into the 3 4s, the 2 5, the 7 8, and then that we spoke about that months back, weeks back. And then we talk about the 10 strengths and the 4 fearlessness, and then we go a little bit deeper. I think this was last week or 2 weeks ago. The ability to teach Dharma, because 37 principles of enlightenment talks about how we sort ourselves up. Right? We have this idea about how to see things, how to analyze things, and how do you change your behavior? How do you correct things one at a time, adjust yourself and correct it accordingly, right? So that's the 37 principles of enlightenment. Eventually you are enlightened, you have the wisdom, okay? And then adjusting yourself. The 10 strengths talks about the ability to share that knowledge, to teach that Dharma, right? You are going from the lost son to the father, right? The son will eventually become the father. The student will eventually become the teacher. So how? This is the transformation, going from 37 principles of enlightenment into the 10 strengths and the 4 fearlessness, because now you're beginning to teach, you're beginning to share. You are transforming from someone who is here for only 3 weeks to someone who is here for 30 years. So that's the transformation, right? So along the way, you gain strength. You know the place and the time. This is the right place. This is the right time to share this. This is the right place and the right time. And you know the skillful means. You know how to share. You know how to connect the stories from one to the other. You know how to connect the people from one to the other. You know how to connect the experiences from one area to this story you're talking about. The skillful means. And you know the capacities. You know the people that you're talking to. You know the people that need what they need to understand. And you know the past karma. What that means is you know what this group has been experiencing. You know how they began. You know the people there, right? Like what Sister Yvonne was talking about. Brother Joshua had the car accident. I heard this. It was heartbroken, right? I didn't know him at the time, but I heard him share the story. And I knew how difficult, he showed pictures where he was in the hospital, he couldn't move. And, I think he had to relearn many. The rehab was very painful. The rehab is not just painful physically, but he had to regain many things, like the ability to speak. I think there were many things that was injured at the time, right? So the past karma. It's not about past lifetime, but it's about our life experiences that we had up until this point. So we know the capacity of people, know the past karma, what happened to them, who they were before, and who they are right now. And the teaching, the main ideas that you want to teach. That's the 10 strengths, right? So the 37 principles of enlightenment set you straight for yourself. And then knowing all these things, you begin to be able to teach and share, right? To teach the Dharma, right? Know the students, know the world, know their needs, and know their issues. That's essentially the strength. Because you know all these things, it's very easy for you to share. You're not even have the title. You don't even need to have the title of the teacher, but you naturally, the knowledge flows from you. You're not standing on the podium to share, but you naturally flows out because you want to share, because you know the people, you know the world experiences, you know what the people needs right now, and you know their issues. So the knowledge naturally flows from you. So it's so natural that it's not like from this day forth, you are the teacher. You are no longer the student. No, it doesn't work that way, right? It's a smooth transition and it jumps back and forth. Today you're listening, tomorrow you're talking. And then the day after that, you're listening again. You're going from student to teacher to student again. So all these things are building up, right? All the tools are getting there, right? And the 4 fearlessness talks about how you are confident. You're confident because you know the true teaching. You are very firm in your heart that this is the way to go. and you can analyze without affliction. You can analyze all the issues without the greed and the anger affecting your judgment. So you can analyze the situation, analyze, their backgrounds, what they need, the issues, etc., without affliction, without all the interfering factors. That's how you're able to make the right judgments, right? You know the teaching and you can make the right judgment. So therefore, you can make the right teaching so that the students can understand you. Imagine that if you have selfishness, if you have selfish needs to your students, you're thinking, I'm going to get you to pay more for each lesson. So then maybe you're blinded to what they need. Maybe you're not so keen on understanding what their issues are, right? So that will make you not so good of a teacher, even if you know all the teachings, because your judgments and your assessments are with affliction. So why is the Buddha, or why is a good teacher able to teach so flawlessly or without hindrance? Because they know the teaching, they know their stuff, okay? But they can also analyze the situation without affliction, completely selfless. So they're able to see what your background is, what is it that you need, what is the problem, right? All the 10 strengths that we just talked about, right? So because you have all these, you can break through whatever the hindrance that's stopping you or the student, because you know all the teachings and you can analyze all this without affliction. There's no self in this analysis, in this analysis, in this assessment, okay? And therefore, you can give the true teaching by resolving with this truth of suffering, the Four Noble Truths. So I think that's the process. So I think these are all tools. I'm just talking about 37 principles. I'm talking about the 10 strengths, which is to be able to know everybody, know the situation, know the timing, the place, the people, the back, the future, and the past, and all of that, right? And know the teaching. And because of all that, you have the four fearlessness. And the most important thing out of all this is the second one. I think without affliction, it makes you see things clearer, that you are able to apply the teachings. Without this, even if you know the true teaching, you will not give the right ways, and the students will not get it the right way. Okay, so those are the tools, right? So when the Buddha shared, this is what I did, right? The story started when the Buddha said, the goal is so far away, you can't get there. It's so profound, you won't understand. But I got there. So it's not impossible. And let me share with you how I did it. And let me start it by saying, these are the tools that I use. The 37 principles, the 10 strengths, and the 4 fearlessness. It makes so much sense that at this point, the Buddha had to stop everybody. You might be asking, why? You might be asking, why is the Buddha stopping? Why? Nobody even said anything. Nobody even interpreted. Nobody even interfered. Nobody interrupted. Yet the Buddha, after explaining all of that, the tools, the Buddha said, stop. You might be wondering, if you're the audience, you'll be like, I wasn't going anywhere. Why are you stopping me? Because the Buddha can see and the Buddha can sense from the students that there are an air of not accepting, or an air of, oh yeah, I knew that. So this is where I think that the twist comes. Yesterday, okay, so this is all true, real stories. Yesterday we're in a meeting, and this is a meeting with the master, and there were, I think, three major topics. One was our financial report, okay, for the past year. And the other one was the new major projects that's coming up. And the one major one that's coming up is the collaboration with UNICEF in Ukraine, Poland, and Moldova. Okay, so these are the major topics. And the third one is the dealings with certain real estate properties, what we should do with them. Okay, so 3 parts. And most of us, or at least I know for me, I focus more on the first 2 because those are the ones that I know more about. The third one is really just going through the process. You know, there are these places, pieces of land, and what we should do. We should sell them. We should do them. We should buy them, etc. Right? There's a lot of thought. But this is already the 3rd time I'm hearing this. Okay, and yesterday's meeting, Master was there, and Master was hearing this for the first time. So we have pre-meetings, and then we get all the information. But because time was short, and so the proceeding was going very fast. And after the first 2 topic, where I made my responses, I made my inputs, I was done, right? Because I knew that the third one was going through the process only. So I was doing, after the first 2, you could tell I was really into the first 2. Right? I was going through the numbers, and I was very focused on what they're saying, and was writing notes and matching notes, and then giving my reply and responses, and then even having my ideas about certain things. And then the first 2 parts are done. I'm done too, even though the meeting continued. And then the third part goes about the real estate. I'm like, I knew that. So I was, my minds were drifting, right? And so Master, amazingly, okay, because the person that was doing the sharing, reporting, using his finger to point, and most of us, I forget it. I said me, okay. I wasn't paying attention. So I was just, I wasn't looking. I was doing my own thing. And Master said, hand him the laser pointer. And so I heard Master interrupting. I didn't hear the main content. I didn't hear the main every words. I just heard Master interrupting. But the reporter, the person reporting, didn't realize that the Master had interrupted. So Master said for the second time, and the person reporting continued on. And the second time I listened, and I still couldn't understand because it was really low. And my job was to make sure that I interrupt the person reporting. Okay. And then the Master spoke for the third time. And I realized it was hand him the pointer. He needs to point. So I quickly jumped up, grabbed the pointer off the table, and then I handed it over to the person reporting. And I thought, wow, good. Nobody moved. And I did. I was the only one that did this. And good job, Joe. Right. Little did I know that I think I was the problem, because everybody probably was listening carefully, but I wasn't. That's when the Buddha said, stop. Stop what you're doing, because you're not doing the right thing, right? So most of the students sitting there will be thinking like, I did this, right? 37 principles, I knew them. 10 strengths, I have them. Or we're working on it, right? So tell us something new. That was the wrong attitude. So eventually Master made sure that we all understood that was the wrong attitude. So Master spent a while telling us that if you're going to shoulder this responsibility, it's not just about your part is done. No, you have to sit there and listen, even if it's a small thing. And this is probably the third time you heard this, and it was my third time, yes. But Master said, but to me, this is my first time. So the person reporting, you didn't do your job. The person sitting here, you didn't do your job by listening. You can tell that he needs a pointer, and nobody realized he needs a pointer. So this is where I think the Buddha said stop anyway. And this is the time now I said stop, because it's already 8 o'clock. So anyway, imagine that I still couldn't get through the 10 suchness because I just talking about all these things sidetracked it. But this chapter, really, if you put yourself into this chapter, you begin to really think that there's so much deeper than just telling you about the tools, right? Just like all the people sharing about their interpretation, about their translation journey. It's not telling you about Google Translate. It's not telling you about, I do the recording here and there. It's not. It's about the heart. It's about their journey. It's about how they see so much more now than the translation. It's about how people interact and how they learn and how they see the value in this, not just the translation, right? And this is exactly what this chapter is talking about, at least the first few parts. And that's why the Buddha stopped everybody, because everybody was only thinking about, oh, so I need 3 computers, right? One on Google Translate and one listening and recording and one doing my own PPT and playing. No, it's important, yes, but that's not the key. And if you keep on missing the point, I'm going to stop you right here because you're missing the point. All right, so let's stop right here because it's already 8:05, and we're going to continue on in the future when we do have time to continue to share more about what this chapter is really talking about and how we can use it in our lives. Thank you all, and this is the sharing for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Joe, for the wonderful sharings. Okay. Hold on. We can earn Brother Joe for guiding us in this session, and Kandan to Sister Yvonne, Sister Kaping for the weight sharing. And yeah, truly that Buddha have engaged in the spiritual cultivation and practices to benefit sentient beings, to purify our mind, to relieve ourselves from suffering. So Buddha have opened countless Dharma door for us to enter. So now we were a lost son, and now we found our way home that is full of treasures, which is the Buddha's teaching. Walking the Bodhisattva path and benefit others and guiding others to the same path. Yeah, so we continue to practice the Buddha's teaching in our life and walking the Bodhisattva path. Okay. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your presence today. Hope that each of us could sustain the Dharma joy and take in another piece of Master's and Hualien love to our life. Let us invite Brother Joe to lead us in making 3 bows to the Buddha and Master Cheng Yen as we depart to apply these teachings in our daily life. Let us pay our respects to our teachers of life's universal truth. Please rise, palms together. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. And a bow to our beloved Skillfuls who could join us today. Kandan, everyone, and have a great weekend.
Zoom picture for the road.
Okay. Yeah, let us open our video.
Kandan, Sister Yvonne, Sister Moon, and everybody. Kandan, Brother Joe too. Wonderful
Just
session.
now you wanted to ask a question, but Brother Joe didn't see your hands up.
Mike's okay. Next time. Next time. No problem. Can.
Yeah. Okay. On.
Brother Joe did not. Brother Joe, can please on your video. Brother Joe still around? They're on already. Hey, this face doesn't come up. Brother Joe is on already. Can take again. Bye.
Okay. Kandan, And
Stay safe.
And
And everybody.